Happy noon on Tuesday to you. You are listening to WRIR LP 97.3 FM Richmond Independent Radio. Support for WRIR comes from Rostov's Coffee and Tea on West Main and the Fan. Offering a variety of locally roasted coffee, both regular and decaffeinated, Rostov supports small farmers and communities throughout the world by directly trading with them. Rostov's Coffee, roasting in Richmond since 1979, on the web at rostovs.com. Rostovs and I both turned 40 this year, so happy birthday, friends at Rostovs. Up next, we have another super geeky, chopping it up geek for you, hosted by the Kultural Khameleon. So sit tight and enjoy.
This is Chopping It Up Geek, and I'm your host, the Kultural Khameleon, and we are broadcasting on WRIR 97.3 FM Richmond Independent Radio. And today, my guest will be Richmond's own DJ 8-Bit Mullet. How you doing today?
Doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. First question, how did you come up with that name?
I wanted to come up with something that represented what I'm all about, but also let people know I don't take myself or my music too seriously. A lot of it is fun and lighthearted, and music's one of the things that people are passionate about, I'm passionate about, but not to the point where, start being too premium, So 8-Bit and Mullet both represent late 80s, early 90s.
Yes. And as you can, well, for those who can't see, he's bald-headed. He doesn't have a mullet. But did you used to sport the infamous mullet back in the day?
I had a rat tail circa Little League baseball back in the day.
Okay.
That's the first thing people ask, though. Where's the mullet? Where's the mullet? And I'm like, dude, the mullet is a metaphorical mullet. It's not on my head. It's embedded in my values and how I live my life. My philosophy is business up front, party in the back.
That's a good way to be. What brings you today, we had one of your partners on the show before, Fingers. So you're part of the collective that does different music inspired by video games and 80s culture and things of that nature. What have you been doing lately? Project-wise or anything?
Project-wise, this year I spent the good first half of this year preparing to release an album of mine. It was a long mix. It was called Console Wars. It was a re-release, actually, but I decided to re-release it in a way that was different and that I hadn't done before. Normally, you try to get as much publicity as you can. You try to announce it to as many people as you can. But this time I actually wanted to get it in front of some folks, and so I started doing some testing with Facebook ads and help trying to reach more people here in Richmond that would be interested in it. And I also set it up so that people could get a track a day emailed to them. So it's not just, here's my Bandcamp page, here's SoundCloud, give it a quick listen, okay, great. This way it was more like a week-long experience, and every day you'd get not only the track of the day, but here's a video from me telling the story of how this track got made, what my thought process was, here's some videos showing my creative process, how I produce in Ableton, how I DJ in Serato, and I tried to make it a lot more fun, and from the feedback I got, people had a great time going through it.
When will this project release this year, or has it already been released?
It's already over. It was released in late June and early July.
Okay, I'm about to go check that out. What inspired you to do this project or do the re-release? Or when you originally did it, since you said you did it before, Console Wars, what inspired you to create Console Wars initially?
The initial idea to make Console Wars was I wanted something that would represent a little more of what I'm about. I associate DJs with vinyl.
Gotcha.
Right. I associate DJs with turntabling. And I decided to make a switch around the time that I moved to Richmond 4 years ago. I used to make beats out in the Bay Area, used to perform those beats in San Francisco. There was a surprisingly large scene of 8-bit music lovers out there. There wasn't one necessarily in Richmond, although it is coming together. Coincidentally, there happen to be a few people like Fingers and myself here in Richmond that make that kind of music.
Yes.
Console Wars, though, represents how once I moved to Richmond, I decided it's time to change it up a little bit. I'm going to really invest in learning how to DJ. I used to play the piano and keyboard.
Okay.
Taught myself in college, and I missed coming home from a hard day's work, a hard day studying, and just jamming it out on an instrument. And DJing is something that's similar to that because it's live and because you can screw up at it, and it's a way to perform. Producing's more like, you're hunched over in the lab making beats. that feels like work, and it is work, and it's fine. And DJing is work too, but it's more like playing an instrument. So anyway, I realized if you're going to try to DJ and blend songs together and mix songs and do all these effects and stuff and EQ and all the things that DJs do for an hour straight, the odds are you're going to screw up. And so I believe in practicing, trying to get better, and my dream would be to go 30 minutes straight without a single error, right? It still hasn't happened. DJing live, there's always errors. People don't even notice it, but I'm thinking, oh, I got to work on that when I get back to the lab again. Console Wars was the first time I said, I'm going to make a mix or a mixtape that's completely recorded live while I'm DJing using Serato, as opposed to opening up a DAW, Ableton's Mind, and just rearranging tracks and doing it from a production standpoint.
Gotcha. You said DJs make mistakes. What mistakes could that be? I mean, I don't really see DJs make mistakes. Maybe they do, but like you said, you can't notice. Like, what's a mistake, or a couple examples of mistakes you say that DJs make when they're out there doing their thing on the tables?
Well, a beginner's mistake would be getting your timing messed up. You've got your first track playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, time to put in the next one, but you miss it a little too soon, a little afterward, not completely on the beat. Suddenly you've got two songs playing at the same time, and their beats are not lined up. And if you've ever heard that, it really sounds like crap.
Is that when dealing with the BPM?
Yeah, having two different BPMs is one reason. The software nowadays, you can sync the tracks. So if one's 120 and one's 130, you can make them both 125 or 120 or 130 or whatever. But even if they're both the same exact BPM, you can start one at the wrong time, slightly off, and it sounds bad. Now, if you're DJing with platters or turntables, you can lightly touch the vinyl or the platter and slow it down a little bit so that they are synced up. Old school DJs would do this entirely in their head, just listening to it. And I can kind of do that, but I also rely on the visual waveform in the software. You can actually see the peaks and valleys, and you can see that they're not synced up and adjust accordingly on the fly.
Okay. What are some other projects that you have worked on or put out?
Last year, a big one was making a collaborative hip-hop album with 20 different Richmond producers and MCs. It was dedicated to remixing songs from Street Fighter II, from the soundtrack.
Okay.
And it also
on that soundtrack, by the way, that's a good soundtrack.
Isn't that great?
Yes, I had I think it's 3 or 4 discs. I got it from MagFest a couple of years ago. But I love some of the tracks for the different levels or whatnot.
It's got some great music, and it had been on my dream list or my release backlog for some time. Like, I got a list a mile long of, wouldn't it be cool if we mashed these two songs together? Wouldn't it be cool if I made a mix completely dedicated to this game or this theme or this or that? And they can only come to fruition so quickly. Mm-hmm. But one I had meant to do for some time was Street Fighter, fighting, street, hip-hop. I'm seeing a theme here.
Yeah.
And I also like to kill multiple birds with one stone. So what else did I want to do last year? I wanted to meet more people who make music in Richmond.
Gotcha.
Always trying to meet more like-minded people, but specifically I wanted to meet more producers. I wanted to meet more MCs. I thought if we established these relationships now, had fun working together as a team, then it would probably lead to other kinds of collaboration opportunities in the future. We'd perform together, and that's exactly what happened. And it was a beautiful thing.
Form a collective, huh?
An informal collective, yeah. It was an interesting project. I have Black Liquid to thank for helping to put the initial people together. Because I said, I know a few people, but I don't know enough to reach out to so that a percentage of them will be on board, and then a smaller percentage of them will actually follow through and make the music.
Gotcha.
Because a friend of mine had made a collective album out in San Francisco, and he told me rule number one is half as many people who are initially excited will actually produce a track for you. Because life happens, or they get busy, or they just don't follow through, or they move, or something happens. So I wanted to reach out to a lot of people and then narrow it down. And we ended up narrowing it down to 10 different tracks. What we did was get enough producers and MCs on board. We created a Facebook chat for all of us.
Gotcha.
And said, okay, guys, pick your fighter. 2 of you, team up. We're all here. Team up with whoever you want, but 2 of you are going to team up for each fighter's theme.
Ah,
So it was a land grab. People were like, oh, I got E Honda, I got Chun-Li, etc. Unbelievably, Ryu never got made. We never made a Ryu track.
what? I thought that'd be one of the first ones.
I know. I thought so too. I forget what happened with that, but it was fun seeing some of the more obscure fighters get tracks made. The Dalsum one was straight Yoga Fire, pun intended.
Yoga Fire, okay.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun, and basically it took about 9 months. It was basically me following up with everyone. How's it coming? Y'all's track being made. Send it to me when it's done and mixed. We had one person do all the mastering, so it had a consistent sound. Had a Richmond artist make the cover art.
Mm-hmm.
And we called it Street Fighter, the RVA Warrior. Garden Grove Brewery in Carytown graciously hosted a release party for that. They even brewed a Street Fighter themed beer just for the occasion, the 100 Hop Slap IPA.
Oh,
Yeah, and then along the way we were like, so what do we do about the money? You know, so if we put this on Spotify or iTunes, there's going to be some sales. Obviously, we want to get this album into people's hands. And I said, you know what, the easiest way is just to give it to charity.
gotcha.
You know, and so we picked Building a Better RPS, which is a local nonprofit. And I said, any sales of CDs that most of them happened that night at the release party. There have been some since on Bandcamp, still getting orders, streaming, and then Bits and Pixels has sold a dozen or two copies as well in their store.
Oh, well, I know where I can get one physically now. I might have to head around and get one. I was about to ask that question, like, where can I get one? I want to get one, but now Bits and Pixels, I'm always around.
Yeah, supplies are running out, and I'm not just saying that. We probably got like 5 copies left, and then I'll probably order more, but that's what I'm down to, my personal stash.
Quick question. Did you run into any copyright or property issues with Namco or anything? Did they have any issues or anything like that?
Now, there's a whole scene of people that do this, and there's an official way to license it through TuneCore.
Okay.
And actually, I used to roll with people who worked and founded this startup called Louder.
Okay. What's that?
It's in San Francisco. It's been bought by CD Baby ever since, but it was the first place where you could go and say, hey, I'm releasing an album. I play violin, or I'm in a band. We're going to cover some theme from Mario, a Mario game. They would make it so that you can put it in all the stores online. You can have it streaming on Pandora or whatever. And they actually calculate all the royalties and send them to Koji Kondo or whoever originally composed the music.
Yes.
And get them their money, which is fine with me. All I've ever wanted as a remix artist is to not get my stuff taken down online.
Yes.
To not get a cease and desist letter. I'm not even trying to, my lofty financial goal is to break even. And I have zero problem whatsoever with the people who made the music getting paid for it.
Lil Flip needed that back in the day because he did that song Game Over, and I forget whoever made Miss Pac-Man, they sued him, and I think it was Sony because of that. They didn't get the song taken off the album, but they had to pay them out pretty penny to get that rectified back in, I think that was 03, 04.
The two biggest considerations are you using the actual sample, or are you recreating the instrumentation but keeping the same notes? Using the samples, it's there still isn't a way to do that. That's 100% above board. The other consideration is if you get big enough, you're going to get noticed. But if you're like most people making this music, legally or not, you're not going to be on anyone's radar.
Gotcha.
Until you reach a certain level of exposure.
Yeah, that song went platinum, so
Right.
They were like, oh, ching ching, time to pay us.
My psycho power knows no limits.
And if you're just tuning in, this is Chopping Up Geek with your host, the Kultural Khameleon, and we're broadcasting on 97.3 FM Richmond Independent Radio. And I'm here with DJ 8-Bit Mullet, one of Richmond's local DJs, and he DJs and makes beats and puts mixtapes out using that nice 1980s, 90s nostalgia and video games. We were talking about you using and making beats from video games. Do you use any other source material as your inspiration for music?
I do, and ultimately, for me, my passion is hearing things I love in a new way. When I used to play piano, 5 years straight, I was playing it 30, 60 minutes a day. I got to the point where I followed the book for a while, and then I said, you know what, I'm at the point where I could get sheet music for any song, and if I sit down and practice it long enough, I'll be playing that song.
Gotcha.
So I didn't learn classical, I didn't learn jazz. I would find the sheet music for 80s TV show themes, like Growing Pains.
Okay.
Rocky III,
Can you play Eye of the Tiger?
Yes, I can.
Oh, that's wonderful.
You get me a keyboard right now, and I will bust out Eye of the Tiger.
Oh, dun, 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 dun. Ah, great. That's great. I love that song.
It can also be surprisingly jazzy, and that's the other thing too. That's where I'm getting at with this. When you're playing on a keyboard, you get to pick the beat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have a lot of fun, say, with a Beatles songbook. I would put on a bossa nova beat or some kind of Latin beat, and then I would change the instruments to be like brass or strings or something. And then let's see how many different ways I could play the same song. Sometimes upbeat, sometimes slow, etc. And that's just fascinating to me. And I've got a ton of Spotify playlists that are cover songs in jazz or coffee shop sounding versions, cover songs that are bluegrass, cover songs in reggae, like Easy Dub All Stars, if you ever listen to them. That's just fascinating to me, because if I like something, I want to hear it in multiple ways. I'm not saying it would get old, but it's a way to continue enjoying something, and I also like novel ideas and things that are more innovative, etc. So with all that said, yes, I remix video game soundtracks, but I also love TV themes, movie themes, even commercial jingles from back in the day.
I think a lot of that stuff in the 80s and the 90s, because we're about the same age. I don't know why it just stuck with us. I'm not sure if things today that come out stick with people like that. I was training with the military one time, and my roommate was amazed by the fact that I could walk in the room and he'd be playing a movie, and I would just hear about 10 seconds of the music, and I would tell him the name of the movie.
Yeah.
And he was freaked out by it. He's like, how do you keep doing that? I'm like, I just remember the music. I'm decent at picking up the beats of different movies and just recalling that from memory.
I bet you are.
Yeah.
Some people have memories like that. I think in general, jingles are super effective. They get ingrained in us. There's people who are old now and still remember jingles for some old-timey bath soap from their childhood in the 40s. But also some people, and we all know movie buffs, sports buffs. There's people who can rattle off the Philadelphia Flyers roster from like the last 30 years off the top of their head. Some people have minds like that. I can't remember where I left my keys, but I could tell you who played Kimmy Gibbler in the TV show Full House. I just remember the names and the themes, and we're out there. There's people like us out there that hang out together, and we rattle off the most obscure trivia and facts. And
I've been accused of that.
Yeah,
I've been accused of that. It's all good. Did you watch The Fuller House?
No, it just looks like garbage.
Okay.
Is it any good?
I haven't. I just saw like a snippet of one episode. Since you are remixing in a way, what is your opinion of all these shows from the past getting rebooted? I want to hear your answer before I tell you how I feel about it.
All right.
Like, they brought back Full House, of course.
I mean, they've brought back everything.
They brought back Roseanne. They're bringing back Murphy Brown. You can name, the list is just growing larger and larger. Either they bring the show back or they do a complete remake, like how they're bringing Lethal Weapon out as a TV series now.
Or a continuation of the original story, like with Fuller House.
Yes.
Is supposed
or probably
to be.
most likely Murphy Brown or things of that nature. How do you feel about that?
Well, like anything, I have mixed feelings about it. The bottom line is it good? Is it worth watching? Plenty of remakes are better than the original. 1982 movie The Thing, for example, with Kurt Russell, is incredible. Much better than the one that came forward in the 50s. A lot of the best movies from the 70s were redone, etc. So I don't mind it in and of itself. I just mind it if it sucks and if it's an obvious cash grab that little or no thought was put into.
I feel you about that, because for a while I was like, man, they're not being original. But if you look back at Hollywood's history, Hollywood is nothing but remake, redo,
It's a business.
city. My thing is about some of the shows, bring back the shows that people didn't want you to end, that they ended too quickly. Bring that back. Mm-hmm. Some shows, had a good 9-10 year run, 8 years, a good decent run, and then they're bringing it back. I'm like, well, what more could you do?
Yes. And some movies, they're making a sequel, and you're like, how could there possibly be a sequel to this story? The story is told. It ended definitively. It's done. You're hurting me by doing this.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. I mean, it's a business. You want to appeal to the most people possible. I think I saw some graph online once. It was on cracked.com for what that's worth, which obviously started as a humor site, but they do have some interesting facts to share. Someone shared a graph about how music peaked around the 80s, like 60s, 70s, total revolution in music. Around the 80s, it peaked, and then since then, it has only become more homogenous. Same chords, same progressions, same this, same that. It all sounds similar, and the reason is they found a winning formula. They found what appeals to the most people. But the more something appeals to the most people, to me, the less interesting it is.
That's like a conversation I have with friends and people, like with rap. Rap, you used to could tell what region different people were from. The North, the South, the East, West. Even within certain regions had a different styles, like New York. Different rappers, Redman and Method Man sounded differently compared to Biggie versus, other members of the Wu-Tang and so on and so forth, and Cameron. But now, like, everyone just all sounds the same. And it's funny, in rap, they used to make fun of the South, but now everything sounds like the South almost.
That's right. Because that's what sells. Not to mention, I heard some other statistic that at least half of the songs on top 40 chart at any given time are made by the same producers.
Yeah, and then a lot of the producers, produce, like you said, the same way.
Right. So I have had to struggle with this to a degree, even within my obscure niche, which is surprisingly large. I mean, I go to a festival, you mentioned MagFest, 20-some thousand people go to that every year.
Yep.
However, I have choices to make. I'm going to remix games, right?
Yes.
Do I remix more popular games, or do I remix obscure games that fewer people remember? Am I going to remix it in styles that appeal to the most possible people because it's currently hip, and try to emulate a club and this whole EDM thing and other stuff that I'm not super into? Or do I pick genres that I love more personally? And I've just decided to make stuff that I like and trust that there is other people out there with a similar mindset, no matter how small, and always try new things and new ways to reach them. And this is an unpopular opinion, but I strongly believe that Facebook can help people to reach the right people because of the algorithm.
Ah, yes. The
Right.
dreaded algorithm. I think that thing listens to your conversations too. I remember the other day I was talking to somebody about something. I didn't type it in or nothing. And I got on the Facebook a little few hours later and it was like popping up what I had talked about. I'm like, okay, that's spooky. I did not type this in the internet at all.
Do you think it's listening to us right now?
Probably is. We'll probably have some 8-bit stuff popping up on as ads, but it's all good.
Yeah, and a lot of musicians are just diametrically opposed to ads, but at the end of the day, it's a square in front of you, just like a flyer on a corkboard.
Yes.
At the local coffee shop. I mean, I don't mind ads per se. I mind irrelevant, stupid ads on stuff that I'm not interested in. If all the ads I saw were like stuff my friends were putting out, I would love it.
Yeah, that probably be good. Besides making beats, you DJ. Do you DJ anywhere locally here? Do you have a regular gig anywhere?
I do, yeah. Since the album launched the first half of the year, my main focus or initiative has been DJing as much as I can without compromising my style or trying to change things up too much just to make a buck. But the first order of business was to find a place that I could have a monthly show. I wanted to have a place to call home, something regular, build a community that way, and it's at Castleburg Brewery.
Okay. What days do you DJ there, or what is the time slot that you have?
On first Wednesdays from 7 to 9 p.m., I host a night there where people can come in and chill, play retro video games that I set up, drink some beers, and then I host a tournament of a certain video game. The whole time I'm up there DJing and hosting and playing video game remixes and other remixes of retro pop culture. And the funnest part as well is playing remixes of the game that we're playing as it's being played, even down to the level. So when we had a Street Fighter tournament, Dalsum versus Sagat, I'm playing a remix of Sagat's theme.
Gotcha.
Just anything kind of meta like that is interesting to me.
Sweet. Where's Castle? What do you call it? Castleberg?
Castleberg.
Where's that at? Is that downtown? Where's that? I'm not familiar.
If you know where Hardywood is,
Yes.
yeah, you take Meadow, you cross Broad and go north. Castleberg is on the way there on Ownby, the same street. There's like that strip mall you got to go by before you go around the corner
Okay.
to Castleberg, or excuse me, to Hardywood. And Castleberg's right there in that strip mall.
Okay. All right. Cool. Some last questions before we wrap this up. What are your top 3 video games that you like?
Oh, man. Let's say Bionic Commando, because there was nothing like it. Still not a lot of games like it. Swinging around, that whole element. Plus, you get to, it was the first NES game that cursed. There was a resurrected Adolf Hitler who calls you a damn fool, and then you swing and drop and shoot a bazooka through the cockpit of a helicopter, and it shows his head explode in slow motion.
Whoa.
This was pretty badass for a Nintendo game back in like 1989 or something.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was super cool. NBA Hang Time.
Yeah, you were speaking that before we started.
Yes, the spiritual successor to NBA Jam, basically NBA Jam on crack and steroids at the same time. It's just so much more exaggerated. The announcer says a lot more, and I'm not good at a lot of games, but that is one that I will take on anyone, and I just shove people, take the ball, dunk it from pretty much the 3-point line, and it's just so ridiculous. I hosted a tournament for Hang Time at the most recent MagFest event, Mag Labs, 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I just love it. And probably Windjammers.
I'm not familiar with that game. What system was that on?
It was on the Neo Geo, so you had to be the rich kid in your neighborhood to have one. I did.
My friend, the Gamer G, he is a big Neo Geo fan, and he has some Neo Geo boards and consoles at home that he has to construct.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. This game is coming back in popularity. It's actually at the Circuit Bar Arcade now. I have a couple friends that are getting really into it, getting really good. But the bottom line is it's this like 80s beach scenario, 2 people with super cool shades throwing Frisbee back and forth, trying to get it past each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're trying to throw it to the right or to the left. It's kind of like hockey in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets very intense. It starts volleying back and forth at lightning speed, and you're on the edge of your seat, and it's very fun to watch a competition of that game.
Well, thanks for that info. I'll have to look out for that. DJ 8-Bit Mullet, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to come out on the show today. I really appreciate that. And I had fun doing this interview with you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cultural Khameleon. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks. Everyone, that has been Chopping It Up Geek. Tune in 2 weeks for another episode, and tune in 1 week for a new episode of Inspire Indeed. And as always, stay geeky, my friends.